Back for another show. Extra Points is what we call it. Guerin and Bill Hastings from the Tulsa World here to hopefully entertain you, inform you a little bit as well. We have we got a lot of, huh?
All right, let's do it.
What? Entertain and inform. That's
yeah.
I mean, it goes without saying, is it not? Do we not entertain the people? Where's your guitar?
Oh, it's I can't reach it.
You're gonna. Oh, I want to hear your favorite Christmas carols.
Well, my favorite Christmas carol is Freebird. So, I mean, I don't know that would resonate beyond me, but no, it's not. But I like Freebird. In fact, that was my most recent guitar endeavor. I had never tried to learn how to play Freebird, and I just thought, well, a billion people can't be wrong. So, it's a very popular tune, and I learned to play it a couple of nights ago. So
you got to know that Santa at some point during his busy night pops up Freebird on the road. That's got to be in his rotation. I mean,
right.
That's a 10-minute kill right there, is it not? Is it
like
not?
9.5 minutes? You're right. It was controversial at the time because they said, "Oh, the radio stations never play it," and here we are 50 years later talking about Freebird.
Yeah, I know Santa's got that high on his list. Okay. Well, if we entertain you, it's a bonus. By the way, Google, Apple, Spotify, the way to get the show. Thanks very much for tuning in as always. Thank you so much for reading what we have to write every week in the Tulsa World and on tulsaworld.com. Bill, what we've been working on lately is a coach search. University of Tulsa cut Philip Montgomery loose over the weekend. And now we speculate on who Rick Dixon tabs to replace Montgomery and try to get the Golden Hurricane going again. First question, I guess, would be whether you were surprised, if you were surprised, that this finally was the end of the Montgomery era.
I was surprised only that even the Sunday immediacy of it didn't surprise me, because TU has a history of making big moves on Sundays. Like end of season, next day Sundays. And so no, there's not really any surprise. And in the piece I wrote for the Monday paper, I mentioned that I had seen a lot of emotional fatigue. What I sensed was emotional fatigue with Philip in recent weeks. And if you watched his recent or attended his recent media sessions, he just had his countenance looked like a guy who was brokenhearted. And I had never seen him look quite like that. So, sorry, speaker just shut down. So I just think, Frank Haith was, and TU parted ways after 8 years, right? So
sounds right.
8 years. 8 years is a good window, a good sized window to determine, I think, whether you want to stay married to somebody or move on in this sense. I mean, not literal marriage, but so I think TU ultimately decided after 8 years, it looks the way it looks. Attendance looks the way it looks. There's a real if there's a defining characteristic of the program, it's inconsistency. Right. So I just think at the 8-year mark, they said, let's see what it looks like with fresh energy from somebody else. And so my guess, Guerin, is that Rick, this isn't a process that began Sunday night for Rick. Just put it that way.
You're right. Right. No, it wasn't. And his departure leaves clues as to what the replacement has to get accomplished. Montgomery connected with his guys. That's unquestionable. The fact that the Hurricane hung in even right to the end of this season,
sure,
where they go to Houston, they had no business beating Houston. I mean, Houston's been a disappointment too this year, but still, you don't expect TU to win that game with everything going around the program. They do. The COVID year was a terrific example of a team fighting through a bunch of stuff and making a go of things. Last year was another big example of going from 3-6 to 6-6 and winning a bowl game. And Montgomery got his guys to sort of move the mountain, so to speak. And it is a mountain to climb if you're a TU football coach. The thing that the next guy has to do is tap into the things that coaches have to do at Tulsa to survive. And that is, win some margin statistics. And you do that on special teams, and Montgomery's teams were disastrous on special teams year after year. And you do that by not doing things like false starting on 3rd and 3, right? Not holding to negate a 15-yard completion on 3rd and 10, not grabbing someone's face mask on, when you've got the back. That happened over and over and over and over again. And Tulsa failed in the margins. And if you're going to make things work at Tulsa with all of the resource problems and challenges, with a roster of 2 stars, not 4 stars, if you're going to succeed, you've got to win in the margins. Montgomery didn't. The next guy does. I don't think there's just no way around that.
Yeah. And Philip is an offensive coach and a quarterbacks coach, and who coached Case Keenum at Houston and Robert Griffin at Baylor, and got unbelievable results from a quarterback he inherited, Dane Evans, in 2016.
Right.
One of the more dynamic and certainly balanced offenses Tulsa's ever had. They almost had exact balance run pass in 2016 and won 10 games. And in each season since, even the great 2020 season, but in each season since, there's been, you talk about inconsistency at the quarterback position. Holy moly. Every quarterback he brought into the program since Dane Evans.
Yeah.
From Chad President, Luke Skipper, all the way through Davis Brent, and now Braxton. There was just such erratic results. And so, which is a shame, because the defensive side of the program got really healthy the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Young left that defensive culture really, really, really healthy. Mm-hmm. And Coach Gillespie really lifted it to a kind of a shocking level, to be honest. And so I just think, I've heard expressions, well, I feel bad for Coach Montgomery, and this is unfortunate, this is really sad, or whatever. And I'm like, it is to a point, except that he got paid about $10 million or $11 million while he was here. So it's, you know what I mean? I mean, he did really well. He made more money to coach football at Tulsa than anybody ever before, just like Frank Haith made a lot more money than anybody ever who coached basketball here. And so after 8 years, the university decided to make a move in basketball and now football in the same calendar year.
Well, whoever, you talk about the quarterback position, and by the way, to support what you're saying, I still find this incredible. The quarterback since Dane Evans left, 99 touchdown passes, 64 interceptions. I mean, when you're almost as likely to throw an interception as a touchdown pass in today's college football game, you got serious problems with your offense. And that was supposed to be Montgomery's forte. So you nailed, if you're going to pin it on one position, you nailed it with the quarterback development. Here's the thing, Bill. If Braylon Braxton's the guy that we saw the last 3 weeks of this season, where he's throwing for 300 yards, running for 50 to 100, yeah, I mean, I guess the first meeting I'm having as the new head coach is a one-on-one with Braylon Braxton and make sure he doesn't get portalitis, because the first staff hire I'm making is probably, assuming this is not an offensive guru, is the quarterback's coach who is going to develop that kind of raw talent that the kid obviously has. So who is that guy, I guess, is the question now.
I think that conversation with Braxton already took place. I think it took place a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Are you with us, or are you out, or are you not? And I think Tulsa's already gotten an assurance from him, because before it became publicly known, I guess, that Davis Britton was going into the portal. It was known at TU. So, I think that conversation already, I think, has taken place. And they feel good about having him in the building when spring practice starts in about 2.5 months, 3 months, whatever.
Sure.
So, but you're right. I mean, he's got a little, you know what, if he develops in the way that we hope he does, he's kind of a Vince Young lookalike a little bit. I was really impressed the other night, not just with him, but the fact that, like you say, they had no business, you know, and 99 out of 100 teams probably in that position, that close to the finish line. I mean, what's their effort level going to really be at? So I was impressed and surprised that they won the game. And so here you go with the search and
who's your guy? Do you have a horse in the Derby?
Well, I mean, it just depends. If you're going with the Power 5 coordinator, younger guy, recruiting, relationships, pedigree guy, I mean, Holman Wiggins from Alabama is the guy I would first look at. He's 42. He coached at TU, you know, granted 1 year, but he has been there. He was with Coach Blankenship in 2011. Okay. He is an assistant head coach for Nick Saban, and he is the one who identified Cole Adams from Owasso, Oklahoma, as a guy that the Alabama Crimson Tide wanted, and he's the guy who beat OU for the commitment of Cole Adams. So, or are you leaning more toward a guy with a little older guy, perhaps? Not that the age is irrelevant, but the experience, or do you lean toward the guy who is a head coach or has been a head coach? In which case, Barry Odom, I hear his name a lot. He has the support of some really important, influential people. And then just in the last 24 hours, I mean, Kevin Wilson, Ohio State offensive coordinator. He's a name that popped up on my phone. Tim Albin, Albin, Ohio Bobcats head coach, an Oklahoma native.
He was in Alva for a while, wasn't he? Out at
yeah, he played there. Yeah, and spent. I think he got his master's in Tahlequah. So I mean, you talk about a guy who has like been all over the map in Oklahoma. So, and it's funny. I recently heard an radio interview with Tim Albin, and was so impressed by the guy. You know, and never dreaming that I was listening to a guy who might be involved at Tulsa ultimately. But so I don't pretend to know like what Rick Dixon's thinking, or if ultimately we're going to go to a news conference and be introduced to a guy who nobody's thinking about or talking about right now. That's what
happened with the basketball surge. Yeah, he did that with the basketball surge, right?
Uncle was a very late in the process guy, name popped, and then Frank Haith, his name didn't pop until he was like en route to the campus to meet with the players.
Yeah.
So you never know, but you know, Seth Luttrell is a name that pops a lot. GJ Kinney was a really hot name in the beginning, but more than one person, and not just guys on my phone, but people who are really kind of connected to the process said, as impressive as GJ Kinney is and as beloved as he is at TU, he's only 33, and there's a concern that the complexities of the Tulsa job would eat him alive at this point. And he's, you know, a young head coach who could be destined for an amazing FBS career. We'll see. But I hear that about him being young, and I think, well, Dave Rader was 31 when he got that job. So, but then again, the number on the age, really, I don't care about that part of it. But.
You know, a name that I didn't throw in, I've propped up Brendan Marion just because I like the guy so much, and I think it's a fantastic story. He was the subject of something I wrote earlier this week. Who's Texas pass game coordinator, receivers coach, who's moved up the one rung in the ladder at a time every year for the last 7. He's another 30.
I think he's a rising star. I think so.
Yeah, but you talked about the complexities of the job, and that's very fair, because I mean, my first thought is Rick's got to find someone who's going to head coach, just because, I mean, the complexities of any job can be enough to overwhelm a guy. But if you've never done it, even at a, well, say that you say that to use like training wheels, right? Because it's not nearly as big a deal as OU or Alabama or Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. Well, you could look at that the other way and say the challenges are so steeper at TU. You don't have a built-in infrastructure to support you, right? And you've got to be creative to find ways around the obstacles. And so it almost behooves you to find ways around maybe smaller obstacles at bigger schools to understand how to get the job done at TU. And that's why names like you said, Barry Odom, Matt Wells, who's done it at Tech,
There you go.
Utah State, Justin Fuentes, done it at Virginia Tech and Memphis. I mean, if they're at all interested, and that's the question, would they be interested in sort of rebooting at a place like Tulsa?
I think this will be very telling, Guerin, as to because Philip, I can't tell you to the penny what he was making, but it was in the neighborhood of 1.3 million to maybe $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that over the last 15 months, TU has taken its fundraising to a better level. Is it at what level is it a better level? I don't know. Does Rick Dixon now have the ability to pay a football coach $2 million? I think once we begin to get a real clear vision of who wants the job, who's really pursuing it, then we'll kind of have a feel for what they're paying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean, what is Kevin Wilson making as a coordinator? Right?
I would assume he'd make more at Ohio State as a coordinator than he would at TU as a head coach.
Exactly. So has TU gotten to a point where, you know, I mean, it's when Todd Graham became the first $1 million coach ever at TU in 2007, it was shocking. And now, you know, in 22 does TU have the ability to pay a head football coach $2 million? And then there's that domino effect of paying the staff, you know. So it's only been 8 years since Bill Blankenship left TU, and Bill was making $625 his final season, $125,000 his final season. So yeah, so I mean, I'm so intrigued by where TU stands on money and what they'll be able to do. And today is the 30th of November. I think there's a decent chance that by the time you and I do this next week, that we'll be talking about the new head coach at TU.
I think Rick Dixon would be upset if we weren't talking about him this time next week. I sort of think we're going to have a pretty good idea by the end of the week, the end of this week, and if not the start of next week. I just get that sense. Hey, a mutual friend of ours, Cade McFarland over at Channel 2, tweeted out a pretty cool list of candidates not long after the news broke Sunday. He included Joe Gillespie, who you mentioned earlier in the show, the guy who used to be TU's defensive coordinator and is now doing a pretty good job, shall we say, with TCU and in his first year with Sonny Dykes down there. How about the offensive coordinator at TCU as a candidate? And it's a name I wish I'd thought of before I wrote the column Monday, because I included just two coordinators, sitting coordinators, and I should have thrown him in as well. How about Garrett Riley? I mean,
he was on the list I put together for the Monday paper. I mean, what is Garrett's age? He is
he's 30 something. 30 something. I don't know what the second number is.
31 or 32. No, I mean we put him on the list in the Monday paper. I mean, just the name. If his name was Garrett Smith, probably not. But because he is Lincoln's brother, and because Lincoln is so, you wonder about the DNA of the Rileys and their ability to generate great offense. And, you know, is he going to be what his brother has become? I don't know. So I don't, that's what I'm saying is I don't I would feel more strongly about Garrett Riley as a candidate or a possible candidate if I knew which way Rick was leaning, or if in fact Rick is, I do know this from messages received last night that definitely there is a search firm working on behalf of TU.
Right.
And because that's how I found out about the Kevin Wilson and Tim Albin involvement. And by involvement, I mean they are on TU's radar somehow. Is Garrett Riley on that radar? I don't know. He's a great name to speculate about.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story because of the name, and a small sample size, very young age, not been a head coach. His brother obviously has. I'd like to think Lincoln might help him out in terms of the do's and don'ts. But I'll say this: the job that he's done with Max Duggan alone this year at TCU probably ought to make him viable in some places. So timeline, you're thinking by this time next week at the latest, or
I just know because of the early signing day.
Right.
There are two immediate assignments. Well, there are 100 immediate assignments for a new football coach, but two of them are to sustain what you have on your commitment list, and then to hopefully, augment it, add to it, make it better, and hope that the pop you get from the hire might inspire a kid or two who might be, on the fence right now to come play for Tulsa. So you can't drag your feet on a football hire.
Is it worth bringing up Lauren Montgomery here at all?
I think so.
No,
I think he's a genius. I think he's a football genius, and I don't think he's a high school football genius. I think he's a genius who happens to be coaching high school football right now, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's worth bringing up. Will TU take a look at him? I'm not suggesting he's like that. Lauren is far and away the best candidate. But if TU doesn't look at a guy who just finished winning 58 in a row and who is favored to win his 8th championship in 9 years and to do it in his first year in 6A1, a 6A1 season during which Bixby averaged 68 points a game and beat opponents by 68-8 on average. If you don't take a look at that guy and see just the tenets of his program, the building, what he has done to build if you don't look at this guy, it's irresponsible. If you don't at least find out what makes him tick, and then what he does to make that program tick. If you don't look at that, if you don't take a look at that, that's irresponsible.
Okay.
And stupid, I would even say, and lazy. If you don't at least find out that, maybe he's not interested. I was around Lauren for 2 hours the other day. I didn't ask him about it. It wasn't the time or the place. I wasn't going to ask him about that on a Monday before he's playing the championship. And to be honest, he and I have never discussed that. I just know he's a genius. And that's not just obviously it's my opinion, but I know I'm right.
So that's what
he is. He's a genius.
Spoken like a sports columnist, right there, ladies and gentlemen. So it's the Owasso Rams having to overcome not just a well-oiled machine of a football team, and I think they've sort of squirted a few more gallons into the mechanism since the loss to Jinx. But all Bill Blankenship has to do is take how many 4-loss Owasso team or 3? 4? Yeah, 4-loss Owasso team and not just beat the team, beat the Bixby Spartans, but beat the genius of a head coach. So can it happen?
Yeah. Yes, actually. Owasso, they lost a 1,500-yard tailback during the summer, and then lost Cole Adams on opening night. So, and Cole Adams might have been the preseason favorite to be the player of the year in the state. And then after that, subsequent to losing those two, by midseason, 5 running backs had gotten hurt. They were starting a tight end at running back, and a little bitty slot receiver named Jakari Thomas, who now is a revelation. He's a phenom. He's like a Presley type kid.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Blankenship and his offensive staff, week by week, just had to see, okay, who do we have available to us, and how can we make it work? Take our available pieces and see what we can get out of it. And now, lo and behold, they've won 8 in a row. And their defense is really good. And now they've gone from this, they would have been a big play offense with a lot of highlights, to a very patient quarterback run game offense. That was so, their ball control the other day is the reason really they won the game, because Union only had 42 plays before the overtime periods began.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they could win. Sure. I mean, Bixby would have to help them in some regards, but I mean, the Bixby that I saw beat Chiefs the other day, they have to be considered not necessarily like a heavy favorite, like 3 or 4 touchdowns, but it is a decisive favorite. Yeah. They've been the best team all year, and I think they're the best team now. Does that mean they'll win? No. It would be foolish to say that a Bill Blankenship team has no chance. That's ridiculous. So it's a fascinating matchup. It's a fascinating championship weekend. In 5A, you have a McAllister team that lost 49-0 midseason at Coweta. They're in the championship game now. Their stud commit for OU, Eric McCarty, which I'm writing about it as we speak, sustained one of the worst knee injuries I've ever heard of 2 weeks ago. And so there's another example of having to reinvent yourself, on the fly. And so here's McAllister in the championship game against Carl Albert. And then in 4A, Wagner lost 42-0 at Cushing midseason.
Yeah.
Started to figure out stuff. You know who plays in the 4A final? Wagner and Cushing. It's crazy. And then here's Owasso loses by 35 opening night to Bixby. It's 1-4 before we even get to October, and now they're in the championship game. So 3 unbelievable examples of recovery and improvisation in season, and not losing, not having their guys' spirits get broken, and just keep grinding. Grinding is a word that's overused sometimes, but I think it applies to these these three teams, because had they taken a step back at all with regard to engagement or giving a crap, they're not playing right now.
Right.
And may not have even played in the playoffs in Owasso's case.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting weekend of championship football.
Yeah. Hey, real quick before we cut everyone loose, I did not expect to be asking you about whether we would be writing about golf again this May, but apparently we're going to be writing about golf again this May.
Yeah.
I read Bill Hastings' byline in the Tulsa World, and it tells me that we've got a few literally heavy hitters coming back to town. What's going on, man?
I was driving to Owasso yesterday and listening to a radio station, Oklahoma City station, and Sam Humphreys, who's a former TU golfer, just kind of drops, oh, by the way. And it was that Live Golf is going to bring an event to Cedar Ridge Country Club in Broken Arrow, May 12th through 14th. And I'm like, wow. Finish it a while, so I'll make some calls and get more details about it. And so here we go. I mean, the Bryson DeChambeau and Bill Mickelson and Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed. There's a lot of stars on that. It's a controversial golf league, no question.
Right.
But they're going to have their 14 tournament schedule for 2023 will be released Monday, I believe. And so at that point, we will know this is happening. Instead of expecting it to happen, we'll know it's going to happen. So yeah, May 12th through 14, which I believe is the same weekend as about 1 billion other events and tournaments and high school championships and Big 12 baseball.
Yeah,
And,
right.
but I mean, Cedar Ridge is a great golf course. I used to cover those LPGA events there 15 years ago, and it will definitely. I mean, with all due respect to Southern Hills is not the only elite, beautiful golf course in this market. So it's a great score for Cedar Ridge. It'll be a great week of not exposure of marketing, exposure, sure, for Cedar Ridge, and a third consecutive year of big time golf in this market. 6 years, the PGA, and now Live Golf.
Well, let me just ask you this real quick. When we covered the PGA in Southern Hills, the PGA versus Live was just eruptive, right? I mean, Mickelson didn't show up because he didn't want to face the cannon fire. Essentially, drove that kind of a name away from that tournament. It was still a topic with almost every golfer who appeared at a press conference. It was still a topic after the PGA was done. Where is that feud now, Bill? Is it simmered any? Has there been any peace offerings? Has there been any progress made on at least getting some kind of a common ground in terms of the two tours that you know of?
Well, I mean, are you talking about the kind of common ground that would lead to an AFL NFL merger?
Yeah,
no, hell no. I don't. I would be shocked if there was some sort of melding of the two companies. No, I mean, it's if it's cooled off a little bit, only because of the passage of time. And I mean, you can't just scream and stomp your feet all day, every day. I mean, at some point you move on. And so no, I think the two leagues are enemies for life, and natural enemies for life, and that'll never change. And what will be interesting about the Saudi-backed Live League is, when are they going to score? And listen, for all I know, maybe a story is broken today and I haven't seen it. I don't know, but when are they going to score a legitimate TV arrangement where I don't have to watch Live Golf on YouTube? Well, really, that's how you watched it. That's how.
Right.
So, and how many more players, how many more marquee A-list guys, make that jump? And at some point too, at what point do the Saudis say, we're pouring money down a hole and not getting a great return, not getting the kind of bang out of this that we expected? So I don't know. I mean, but this will be their first. Last year they had 8 tournaments. This year 14. I guess this will kind of be their first real full year. Maybe, I guess, is the best way to put it. Well, yeah, it would be their first full year. Their first tournament was like a few weeks after the PGA, right? Last year. So I don't know if they continue to throw $100 million guaranteed contracts at players. There'll be a few more guys who jump on that money. You kidding? But I will say this: they need to clean up with however they present it on television or on YouTube or whatever. They got to clean some stuff up, because that vertical scoreboard on the left edge of the screen, that'll give you motion sickness just trying to keep up with that. And then the team format and the individual scoring and all that stuff, it's a lot to keep up with. In some regards, I think I don't know. I don't know that the team format model is that. I don't know if the public is that fired up about that part of it. I just don't. I mean, it's different for sure. It's different that they let them wear shorts. There's some obvious differences, like the ABA with the red, white, and blue basketball. I mean, so I'd just be interested to see by the time we get to 24 if Live Golf still looks like it, mostly like it does today, or if they're just going to tweak this thing as they go along.
Yeah.
But apparently we're going to have it here for 3 days Mid-May, May 12th, 13, 14. I just hope we have the same weather for that event that we had here for the seniors.
You mean like the two different weather patterns?
Oh, it just a cool, beautiful, perfect.
Yeah.
Days ago. And it's obviously it's live events are 54 hole 3 days versus 72 4 days for the P. So no, but to answer your question, I don't think they'll ever be like peace or they'll never join hands and join forces. I don't see that ever.
All right. We'll tear through that a lot more as we move from the winter to the spring and start to put everything else aside. But it's still football primarily on everyone's mind. We realize that. So we tried to cover some ground on that topic here today. Enjoy the high school games if you're headed that direction this weekend, folks. Keep reading our material on the TU coach search and what's going on with the Sooners and Cowboys. They've shut down their regular seasons, but they still have bowl prep to take care of, and a bowl invite coming their way on Sunday. We'll be all over that as we try to do. For Bill, this is Guerin. Thank you very much for tuning in to Extra Points. We'll talk to you next week.